The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 13th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" The master answered, "An enemy has done this." The slaves said to him, "Then do you want us to go and gather them?" But he replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And Jesus' disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." Jesus answered, "The one who sows this good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of the Father. Let anyone with ears listen." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Well, I've already filed a report with the Colcamp Police Department, so I think it's time I shared what has happened with all of you. At some point over the past year, in my perfectly manicured and maintained flower beds, somebody came, most likely during the dead of night, and planted weeds. It had to have been a targeted attack. I know, whoever it was, they were out to get me. Now, I'll tell this story. I've lost all sense of time when it comes to this situation because it's been so painful to experience. But I believe it happened last summer. I happened to walk by one of my perfectly maintained and manicured flower beds, and there it was. This green shoot popping up out of the ground that I just didn't recognize. I'm getting this look like that's not at all how it happened, and you're right. This is one of those flower beds that I've fought with over the years. We've weeded it and weeded it and weeded it. We've ripped out so many things year after year. We've planted new plants. We've tried to make it a butterfly garden, put in native plants, but those weeds kept coming. It's never been manicured or maintained well at all. But at least when I was working in those beds, I recognized those weeds. They were the same weeds every year that would try and take over this garden that I would have to pull again and again, that a garden I was trying to have some sense of control over. But then it did happen. There came weeds that I had never seen in there before. I first noticed them as I walked by them one day, and I thought, oh, great, now what's growing? Maybe it's something I planted. Then not many days later, I walked by, and it seemed as though they had doubled in size. And then a few days after that, they were as tall as me, and I had to stop and stand and see and watch them. And literally while I was standing there watching them, they grew taller than me. In that very moment. Okay, not before my eyes, but it was pretty soon after, it was taller than me. And there it was, this large expanse of Johnson grass. At least I think that's what it was. I had to take a picture of it with my phone and look it up with the Google. And yeah, I know I did landscaping as a previous career, and I should have just known what it is, but this is also why I switched jobs. But, like I said, I don't ever remember seeing that particular weed there before. I don't remember ever having that Johnson grass there. So, on a beautiful midsummer, 100-degree high humidity day, I pulled it all out by hand. And yes, you would probably say, you didn't listen to Jesus here. You're right. I just couldn't handle it. It was overwhelming everything else in the bed. It was annoying me to no end. And so it had to go. I pulled it out, problem solved, so I thought. Then what happened? They came back. Again. And again. And again. And I would pull it out by hand, always on the hottest day, in the direct sun, pull it out again, and again, and again. And I am convinced the only way it could have gotten there was if someone came in the middle of the night and planted it there. It was diabolical. It was frustrating, and I know it was intentional. Sowing weeds among my quote-unquote wheat. And so now the police are investigating. Well, certainly felt like it could have been intentional, you know. Maybe I felt like that because something like this has been in my head before, since I've often thought that one way of paying back an enemy could be to share some of my Star of Bethlehem flower bulbs in their yard while they're not looking as a gift. I would never do that. Or maybe I thought of this diabolical, attack on me because of how many times I've come across this parable from Jesus over the years. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. Just like last week's parable of the sower, I think this parable, again, resonates with so many of us. Because just like last week, as so many of us have planted a seed of some kind at some point in our life, I would say most all of us have dealt with weeds of some kind. Maybe in pastures or croplands, maybe in flower beds or home gardens, or even just coming up between the cracks of our sidewalk or in the middle of the gravel of our driveway. But then even more broadly than that, I think we connect with this parable because every single one of us knows, without a doubt, that evil exists all around us in this world. Right? We watch it on the news. We read it in our social media feeds. We witness it in the words and actions of people in our community and people in our country and people around the world. And maybe we think things are worse today than they were yesterday or last year or 10 years ago or 100 years ago. Or maybe we think this is just the status quo and it's the way it's always been. I don't know, but I'm sure your heart aches. My heart aches. We can often do nothing more than just shake our heads at how enormous the gap is between the way the world ought to be, the way that God desires, the way that God designed it for the world and for us, the gap between that and the way the world actually is. And that gap just feels so expansive that we just feel powerless against it, you know? What can I, one single person, do to oppose or fight against the evil powers that fill this world? What can little old me do when it's the people in power or the people who are hoarding all the wealth, when they're the ones who are controlling the levers? There's just nothing for us to do, right? But then I bet there are other times when we do feel emboldened, where we feel brave enough or outraged enough that we think we might actually be able to do something about this evil around us. And so we find those avenues where we can speak our voices, or we feel like those farmhands in Jesus' parable, and we want to run right out there and start pulling up the evil by the roots. I mean, that's what Jesus would do, right? He's the one who speaks truth to power. He protects the vulnerable. He shields the innocent from evil forces. He's the Prince of Peace. He'd support these efforts to rid the world of evil, right? Get those weeds out of here, right? Right? Master, do you want us to go and gather the weeds out of the field? But the master replied, no. For in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. And this is the point of the parable where I'm stopped in my tracks. Did Jesus just tell us to leave the evil alone? To let it continue to grow around us? Well, yeah. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers to collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat into my barn. So if this story really is, as Jesus says, a story about evil in the world and God's response to it, then what Jesus is telling us is that God does not have any immediate plans to uproot the evil among us. God's plan for now is to let the evil be. But wait, this is evil we're talking about, right? This is not part of God's kingdom. This is not what God wants in this world. How can we allow this? What is Jesus even getting at in this parable? It made me think that when I was out in my yard, when I was pulling up that Johnson grass, or in other times when I'm doing that annual battle against the starflower, I've made mistakes. I've pulled the wrong thing out. I've grabbed onto the wrong stalk of grass or green plant, and I've pulled out good plants. Or I've grabbed onto the right stalk of grass, I've grabbed the right weed, but the roots had such a hold on the things around it that, just like in the parable, those commingled roots all came out together. And then I look at the pile around me of the weeds that are laying there, and I think, I've probably dropped more weed seeds in doing this than I did, I probably helped those seeds more than animals or the winds would in spreading the weeds. Maybe Jesus has a point. Maybe the message of the parable applies to me. You'll do more harm than good if you try to pull up those weeds. Could you imagine leaving the weeds in your garden? I'm thinking of some few of you gardeners out there that probably have sweaty palms right now, thinking of the weeds growing around your tomatoes. So what's Jesus saying? Well, think a little bit more about this parable. The enemy came at night. He sowed the evil seeds. He sowed these weeds. And then what did the enemy do? Nothing. The enemy left. The enemy walked away. The enemy didn't stick around to water anything. He didn't try to tend these weed seeds. I think the question is why? Why didn't the enemy have to do anything else? Well, for one thing, I think we all know that weeds don't need much tending to proliferate. But the enemy also knew that those who were growing the good seeds, growing the wheat, those who are trying to work for good, will actually do the work of allowing evil to take root and grow and spread. Like the farmhands in the parable, they want to pull the weeds. And yes, that would get rid of a lot of the evil, but it would also hurt the good plants. The enemy knew that we would just be just as useful with those weeds as the enemy could. Think about how Jesus operated in the world of his day. There was plenty of evil to go around in his day as well. There was oppression, there was everything just like here today. But did Jesus try to work and uproot those things? Not nearly as much as he did as he tried to grow and nurture the good things around him. He tended the good plants. He tended the good seeds. He worked on growing the goodness more than he did of taking away the evil. And I wondered how that would work for us. I know one thing that really has frustrated me lately is all of the disgusting and angry and evil rhetoric and words that are being thrown around these days. There's a lot of labeling and name-calling going on, and I see that as evil. And every day I hear that and I see that, and I wish there was something that I could do to shut those voices up, to make them be quiet, to get rid of those words and those labels, to get rid of what I see as evil. But this parable stops me in my tracks. It says, maybe that's not my job, to quiet the evil voices, because they're going to be there no matter what. Maybe my job is to tend the goodness, to raise up the good voices, to speak power to evil, to nurture the goodness, to nurture the kingdom, to bring about this good news, to help the good news spread and grow, and allow that to overcome the evil. Jesus says that is what wins in the end. And so when we look around at the weeds that are out there, as we look around at the evil that is out there, we, as always, are called to tend the goodness, to plant good seeds, to nurture the good soil, and to proclaim the good news of Christ always. Amen.